Chapter 27 The Wrath of a Mother. A light flickered above the heads of the three ponies that inhabited one of Canterlot Castle's two interrogation rooms. The room was located deep beneath the castle itself, just off from where the grimy and vastly disused castle dungeons were located. Two of the ponies in the room were Princesses Celestia and Luna. The third was a very uncomfortable-looking Pegasus stallion, who sat in a metal chair behind the only other furnishing in the room, a table with various items scattered about. To the stallion's right, there was a blacked-out window where a few guards stood on the other side, just watching and waiting for him to cause trouble. Celestia gave the disgraced Solar Guard an extremely stern look. "You know why you are here," she simply stated. "Yes, I surrendered myself to you in the hopes of fair judgment, and in the hopes of stopping the commander before any pony else gets hurt." "Then," Luna spoke, "let us begin." Luna brought up a folder in her magic with the guard's picture on the front. Luna opened and began to read some information from it. "Private Harvest Leaf, 21 years of age, a Pegasus born in the city of Cloudsdale. Your file states you have garnered a reputation for your physical prowess and hoof-to-hoof fighting skills. It also states that you had a childhood imaginary dragon friend called Doodles?" Harvest chuckled sheepishly. Yeah, not sure why that was included in my file." Luna raised an eyebrow at that, but chose to stay on subject. "Witness testimony places you as one of the ponies who attacked Princess Twilight Sparkle and caused the deaths of 5 individuals protecting her. Captain Cardus was injured and Princess Twilight herself is in a deep coma. Your crimes warrant you be charged with treason. Do you understand the charges levied against you?" "Yes, Your Highness." Luna remained calm as she continued, but no pony could mistake the underlying fury in her tone. "Considering the intended target, no pony would bat an eye if we were to simply hand you to Queen Chrysalis for judgment, and believe me when I say she will be far less forgiving. So, Harvest Leaf, tell us the truth, the whole truth. At this point, lying will only make things worse for yourself." "Yes, I imagine you have all sorts of lie detector spells in place," Harvest noted. "I'll do as you ask and answer all questions provided." "Very good." Luna nodded to Celestia to begin. "Harvest Leaf, could you please detail the events leading up to and during the events of the attack on Twilight Sparkle?" "Yes, Your Highness. It started soon after the wedding." Harvest Leaf described to the princesses how Broadsword had approached him, and several others soon after the wedding, how he had demonized the changelings, painted them as monstrous tricksters, and used just the right honeyed words to convince them of his sincerity. He told them of their secret meetings, and the princesses only grew angrier when he told them of the innocent changelings they had hunted down and killed within the city. He told them of their hidden base within the Everfree Forest, and ended with his part in the attempted assassination and the hours following. And since I wasn't as banged up as the others, I was authorized to go on patrol. I used the opportunity to run straight here, and, well, you know the rest." Celestia thought over what had just been said. "The Everfree Forest, a place barely any pony goes. No wonder the commander chose to make a base there, but at least now we know where he is." "There is one more thing," Harvest interrupted. "When Broadsword finds out Twilight is alive, and he likely already has, he'll likely activate the golems as a precaution." "Golems?" Luna said questioningly. "How did he get his hooves on golems?" "Apparently a top mage in Celestia's school owed him a favor. Or two. Either way, They will bolster the force already on site.
Well, in any case, you have been most helpful, Harvest Leaf, but there is one last thing I want to know.
Luna leaned forwards.
You have told us how you came to be here, but you haven't told us why. Why have you abandoned your fellow conspirators and sold them out? What changed your mind?
Several things, he responded. The fear and fury Princess Twilight showed during the attack. The behavior of some of the other changelings we have hunted. Harvest's eyes became downcast. And her.
Her?
Luna interrupted. Bringing his head back up to face Luna, he replied, You know, the maid that died. Well, the thing is, there are many whispers that the commander was responsible. Luna looked him in the eyes.
That maid's name was Sunny Aura.
Yes, I know. I knew her. Rumor has it she was Broadsword's old flame. I didn't know much about the situation between those two, but in my experience, she was the humblest pony this side of Equestria. She also had a pet chameleon named Andy.
You're going on a tangent, Private Leaf. Please stay on subject.
Right, sorry. Anyway, a few of us started to believe that he had a hoof in her death. Just before I left, I even worked up the courage to ask him, and he was indifferent. He didn't answer yes or no, but Harvest Leaf sighed. When I talked to the others afterwards, they just didn't seem to care as much as they really should have. It was then that I realized who it was I was fighting with, and I wanted no part in it. So I requested to go on patrol and flew here as fast as my wings could take me.
I see. Is that all?
Yes, Your Highness. That's everything I can tell you. Harvest slumped in his seat.
Very well.
Luna nodded towards the blacked-out window, and 2 solar guards walked in and stood either side of Harvest Leaf. Luna stood to the side as Celestia stood regally directly opposite of Harvest Leaf, and spread her wings as she delivered her verdict.
Private Harvest Leaf, of the Equestrian Solar Guard, you shall be imprisoned within the dungeons until your court-martial at a later date. We can't ignore the crimes you have committed against the harmony of Equestria and the surrounding lands, but the assistance you provided today will also be taken into account when judgment is rendered. Do you have anything else to say in your defense?
Harvest Leaf hung his head dejectedly as he rose to his hoofs. No, Your Highness.
Very well. Take him away.
The 2 solar guards led Harvest Leaf out of the interrogation room, leaving the 2 royal sisters alone.
Sister, Luna addressed, what do you intend to do? I will talk with Chrysalis, but this group must be wiped out soon to prevent another catastrophe. I do not intend to let Broadsword escape, and we must pray that the others surrender to us if they do not wish to share his inevitable fate. I will be there, as I know Chrysalis will almost certainly will. I imagine your captain and Sergeant Longshot will also volunteer readily. Be careful not to let your personal feelings get in the way, Tia. They are a very dangerous thing in the middle of battle.
Celestia gave her little sister a smile.
Do not worry, Lulu. I promise I will be fine. The fate of Broadsword's co-conspirators is still up to them when the time comes, but Broadsword's sentence has been relegated to Queen Chrysalis to decide, considering the circumstances, and we both know what the verdict will be. Funny how that leaves your pristine image intact. Luna?
Surprise and hurt tinged Celestia's voice.
You cannot fool me, Tia. I know you want him dead just as much as Chrysalis. Please, be careful. Such dark thoughts can lead to much more trouble down the road.
Celestia lifted one alabaster wing over Luna.
Then it is a good thing I have my little sister to keep me in check.
She smiled as she gave her sister a little nuzzle. Luna nuzzled back.
I said it once, and I will say it again. How did you last without me for 1,000 years? It is a mystery to us all, Celestia chuckled.
A peaceful scene painted the late afternoon countryside just outside Canterlot. A small rabbit emerged from his hole. It could see that night was falling fast, but there were still vestiges of sunlight remaining. Its ear twitched as it happily observed its surroundings and took several breaths of wonderful fresh air. However, its head darted to the side as the sounds of blades whipping through the air made itself known. Spooked, the rabbit immediately jumped back into its hole as 4 shadows formed and moved onwards extremely fast. "Yee-haw!" Longshot shouted, with his best impression of a country accent. He was hanging out the door of one of the 4 helicopters speeding through the air towards the Everfree. Vladimir was not quite enjoying the ride as much as his friend was, and he was near cowering at the very back of the vehicle's crew compartment. He was joined by Queen Chrysalis, who also did not look like she was having a very good time.
These machines are death traps,
she shouted at Celestia, who was crouched towards the front of the compartment.
I would feel much more comfortable flying with my own wings. Unless you're Rainbow Dash, these are much quicker,
Celestia shouted back over the sound of the rotors.
You're not scared, are you?
Chrysalis growled.
A changeling queen does not get scared over such trivial things. I simply don't want to crash into the ground and go up in a fiery explosion!
Honestly, Your Highness, Vladimir spoke, I'm with Queen Chrysalis on this one.
Oh, come on, Vlad!
Longshot laughed. How is this not exciting? The 4 helicopters flew through the air. They had never been deployed in an actual operation before, so the ponies who created and maintained them were all too eager to test them out in the field. However, they were likely disappointed when they were told they wouldn't be used in combat, just to get them closer to the target in a timely manner. They planned to set down far enough away so that they wouldn't be fired upon, but close enough that those deployed could quickly hoof it out from there. Each chopper contained 5 armored individuals, 2 containing 5 changeling soldiers each, another containing entirely EUP troopers, and the final one containing Vladimir, Longshot, and 3 more EUP soldiers, the silver EUP armor contrasting greatly with Vladimir's dark blue. That particular helicopter was also hosting Queen Chrysalis and Princess Celestia, the latter in full royal body armor, and she was carrying a large golden halberd. The former, however, didn't have any armor, nor a weapon.
Queen Chrysalis, Celestia called out, may I inquire on the lack of armaments? I am a fully grown changeling queen. My chitin is as strong as any armor, and magic is my preferred weapon. As it is mine, but what happens in close quarters engagements?
Chrysalis simply smiled and displayed her carnivorous fangs. Celestia shook her head in disapproval.
Do not get overconfident, Chrysalis. Having a weapon to fall back on would not go amiss. Do not worry about me, Princess. I am more curious about the armor you are wearing. It looks old, and I don't believe any of my changelings have ever witnessed you wear it.
It is old. I last wore it when we warred with the Griffins during the Expansion Wars, and before that during the war against the tyrant King Sombra. However, ever since that night 1,000 years ago, it has remained in the armory, simply gaining dust like an old museum piece.
I take it you're not glad to be wearing it again, then. The nostalgia isn't worth what is to come,
Celestia replied solemnly.
And it reminds me of times I would like to forget.
Hey, Vlad! Longshot called back to the lunar captain. Where's Cardus and Shining? I didn't think they'd want to miss this. With their families at the hospital, Vladimir responded. Now we've got a job to do, so focus and let's do it well. After a short trip, the 4 helicopters performed a rapid descent, coming to a hover just meters above the ground, a short distance away from a large tree line. The changeling and pony soldiers quickly flew or rappelled down from the helicopters and landed on the ground below, quickly moving into formation. As Celestia touched down just behind Queen Chrysalis, she lit her horn a soft gold as the last vestiges of sunlight slipped beneath the horizon, and somewhere in Canterlot, Princess Luna raised the moon high into the sky. With the power of the sun behind her, Celestia's horn made the immediate area as clear as day. The 4 aviation vehicles took off again as soon as their passengers were gone, the chopper's pilots intent on setting down in the nearby town of Ponyville until extraction was needed. Okay then, Vladimir called out. They'll likely be ready to meet us, so I want tight formations and for every pony to be on constant alert. Move out! Serpen sat by the war map on the command platform within the Everfree hideout. Plans were laid out on the table, and notes were made on the map itself as the changeling figured out exactly how to kill Twilight during her stay at the hospital, and still make a clean getaway. He believed he was making progress, until the lieutenant that kept bothering him bothered him yet again. Sir, 4 helicopters just touched down outside the forest, and those that deployed are heading straight for us. We have minutes at best. Serpens gave a shout of frustration, throwing some of his notes off the table in anger. Ugh! Damn them all! At least now we know why Harvest Leaf vanished. What are we facing? About 20 changelings and ponies. The Queen and even Princess Celestia are among them. Sir, some of us aren't comfortable facing off against the Princess. That's not Celestia. Sir? Do you really think the Princess would enter battle herself? She wouldn't risk herself like that for the parasites, manipulation or not. She's a changeling in disguise. Deal with them without mercy. Foolishly, the lieutenant bought it, as always. Yes, sir. Good. Now have every pony and all the golems converge at the entrance checkpoint. Be ready to fight. The lieutenant saluted before running off to carry out his orders, a scramble of hoofs following as they all got ready for the coming fight. Serpens growled to himself, bringing up his broadsword and examining the softly glowing red rune within it. Fine. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me, Chrysalis. Vladimir saw the entrance to the target cave ahead, and a flurry of movement was coming from within. We have contacts. Princess, your orders? Form up behind me. The commander's fate is sealed, but I want to give these ponies a chance. The group emerged from the dense trees lining the edge of the forest and quickly formed up on the cave. Then they were met with what Vladimir counted as 25 fully armed ponies and around 10 golems, all of which were waiting for them. The golems were near featureless impersonations of ponies with large, retractable blades attached to their forelimbs. But Vladimir knew all too well that they didn't need the blades to effectively kill a pony. At the head of the enemy group, a single pony stepped forward, his armor signifying him as a lieutenant of the Solar Guard. Hold there, parasites! You will go no further! Celestia stepped forwards from the group and addressed the misguided ponies. Hear me, ponies of the Solar Guard, for I am your princess, and I command you to stop this madness. If you surrender yourselves now, you shall be treated mercifully. But should you continue down this path of disharmony, you shall face the full wrath of the sun. Quiet, you parasite! The lieutenant shouted. You can't fool us. The princess would never attack her own ponies, nor would she ever taint herself with battle. Celestia furrowed her eyebrows at the ignorant pony.
You know very little, Lieutenant. I have faced conflict you can only see in your deepest nightmares. I have faced Discord, the Tyrant King, and my own sister. I am Princess Celestia, and even though you outnumber us, you cannot hope to defeat us. I am asking again, stand down now. This is your last chance.
Lies and manipulations, the lieutenant shouted, and Celestia sighed as she knew what was about to happen. True protectors of Equestria, kill the... He never finished his final order, as Celestia struck first. Her anger, her pain, and the end of her patience merged together, and with one lethal golden lance of magic from Celestia's horn, his head flew through the air, landing in front of one of the enemy golems. And then all hell broke loose. Immediately, the clash of steel could be heard as blades clanged off one another. 2 EUP soldiers flanked one of the traitorous solar guards and dug the blades into his chest. Once they retracted their swords from the dead pony, one of them turned around only to be knocked through the air by one of the golems with a vicious kick. As Vladimir fought with one of their enemies, Longshot fired a bolt at one of the opposing side's own crossbow-wielding troops, and was rewarded with a shout of pain and the pony falling to the ground with an arrow sticking out of his eye socket. Simultaneously, Celestia took to the air and fired a devastating beam through the battlefield, causing the solar guards to run for cover. One unfortunate mare was caught in the blast, and she was reduced to ashes in mere moments. Several ponies moved to surround Queen Chrysalis and strike at her, only for her to release a pulse of magic that sent them all flying backwards and be lost in the crowd. One of the golems jumped out at her and released its blade, making a lunging slash for the queen's neck. Chrysalis simply sidestepped, and a quick flash of her horn reduced the golem to mere rubble, the momentum making it rain small rocks on her forelegs for a second or two. Scanning the battlefield, Chrysalis realized Broadsword himself wasn't in attendance. Realizing that he must still be inside the cave, Chrysalis quickly released a beam of magic into a small group of enemy ponies to knock them to the side and create an opening directly to the cave, which Chrysalis quickly sprinted right for. As the queen entered the cave, Longshot noticed what she was doing and moved to follow her in, not wanting the changeling queen to face what lay within on her own. Chrysalis didn't see Longshot also break away from the fight and move to follow her inside. If she did, she might have waited for him, but with adrenaline pumping through her veins, she continued onwards by herself. As Chrysalis ran into the cave, the sound of the fighting outside became more muffled. As she reached the center of the cave, she saw several tents littered the ground. There were also supply crates, cooking fires, and a raised metal platform in the center. Broadsword looked down on the changeling queen from up on the platform, smirked, and then simply started walking away. Snarling, Chrysalis made her way up the ramp and onto the platform itself. A map of Equestria sat on a war table. Broadsword himself sat down at the other end, a glass of what looked like whiskey in his hoof.
"Why, you arrogant!"
Chrysalis growled, her horn lighting up with a green aura which grasped the table and sent it flying off of the platform, leaving nothing between Chrysalis and her prey. Broadsword simply rolled his eyes as he downed the last of his whiskey in one go and threw the glass off of the platform, the sound of smashing glass echoing throughout the cave. "I was going to offer you a drink, but I take it you would have refused." The commander grinned.
"Your crimes have gone unpunished long enough. Celestia will make short work of your followers, and I will deal with you."
"Well, Followers is a bit of a strong word. Cannon fodder is far closer to what they actually are. And while my initial plans may have failed, I may still save them. If I kill you. If I do it quickly enough, I myself may yet escape. And then I'll be back for your precious daughter. If Chrysalis was going to ask who exactly the they were that he wanted to save, because they certainly were not the ponies outside, that chance was lost at Broadsword's last comment.
You will never touch her again!
She shouted in anger, her horn charging with deadly power. Now, let's not be too hasty, Broadsword said as he unsheathed his sword, a broadsword of all things, a sword that glowed red with intense, magical power.
What?
Chrysalis stammered as she felt her magical energy simply drain away. Studying the sword closely, she could see a red rune embedded within the blade. Useful little thing this, provided by my benefactor. Just in case. This rune is incredibly rare, but then again I believe you recognize it.
That rune was an heirloom of Queen Imperatrix. How did you get that? It was meant to have been buried with her.
It was, until I needed it. It's not like your grandmother needed it anymore. She's dead after all. Besides, I hear that your mother and Imperatrix weren't too chummy anyhow. And now, without your magic, what are you? With a shout, Chrysalis rushed forward, her fangs glaring. With a shake of his head, Broadsword brought up his weapon and struck out, forcing Chrysalis to dive away. One strike was followed by another, and another. Chrysalis was defenseless, and she couldn't get close enough to use her fangs without being sliced in two. All she could do was dodge Broadsword's blows, which were getting closer each time to hitting their mark.
Why did Celestia have to be right?
She mentally kicked herself. The next swing grazed Chrysalis's cheek. Broadsword smoked as he went in for one final blow. An arrow struck next to Broadsword as Longshot burst onto the platform. He quickly reloaded and took a more aimed shot straight at Broadsword's snarling face. Broadsword deflected the arrow with the flat edge of his blade before flying forwards towards the Earth Pony. Chrysalis tried to intercept him, but a kick to the face sent her over the platform's edge. Longshot tried to hit Broadsword with the stock of his weapon, but it was knocked from his grasp before he was able to. Longshot dodged two swings in quick succession before an opening allowed him to tackle Broadsword to the ground, the two struggling over the rune-embedded sword. As the two struggled, Longshot administered several punches to the face, drawing blood from Broadsword's muzzle. The commander, however, responded in kind. Broadsword's first and only punch, which was surprisingly strong, dazed the sergeant, allowing Broadsword to kick Longshot off. As Longshot struggled on the floor, his opponent picked up his sword and used the opportunity to drive his blade into a gap in Longshot's silver EUP armor. Longshot went still. Chrysalis recovered from her fall just as the blow was delivered, the Changeling Queen watching in horror. However, she also realized she had been knocked outside the rune's area of effect, so Chrysalis lit up her horn and unleashed a devastating beam onto the foundations of the platform, bringing the whole thing crumbling down. The debris obscured the commander from sight as it came down, kicking up plenty of dirt and dust lining the cave floor. Chrysalis kept her distance, surveying the wreckage for signs of life as the dust cleared. She barely noticed the figure out at the corner of her eye strike out from behind. Jumping to the side, Chrysalis narrowly dodged Broadsword's attack before trying to blast him with magic, only for the rune's effects to once again take place. Chrysalis stood, the last attack having driven her up against the cave wall.
"How did you get behind me?"
"You will never know." Broadsword smirked again, bringing his sword up for what he planned to be the killing blow, only for another arrow to strike him in the foreleg, causing the commander to shout in pain as he dropped his blade. Longshot smiled at Chrysalis when she spotted him emerge from the wreckage. "Smug bastard!" he called out to Broadsword before collapsing, heavily wounded. Broadsword tried to reach for his blade, only for it to be picked up by a black, hole-ridden hoof, with another rolling him over and keeping him pinned. Broadsword looked up at Chrysalis's hate-filled face as she drove his own blade into his chest. A silence filled the cavern as Chrysalis stepped off of the dying commander, leaving the sword embedded in him. The fighting outside also seemed to have come to a stop, the shouting and sounds of battle ceasing to be. Coughing up blood, Broadsword looked up at Chrysalis, their eyes meeting as he spoke one last time.
"You have no idea what you have unleashed today, Chrysalis. And as darkness takes me, I must blame it on my failure. My family, my friends, my queen."
Broadsword's head dropped, and his eyes closed as green flames racked over his body, revealing the changeling beneath.
"I have doomed them all."
And with those parting words, Infiltrator Serpens was dead. Chrysalis stared, eyes wide at the sight. She realized he must have been using changeling magic to create a portal to escape the collapsing platform and get behind her. But who was this changeling? And where was the true Commander Broadsword? However, she was drawn away from that issue as she remembered her injured ally and quickly rushed to his aid. However, when she arrived, Longshot was completely still, his crossbow still in his grasp and his signature smirk still on his face. Chrysalis, now free from the rune's effects, scanned his body, hoping against hope for a sign of life. None. Longshot had made the ultimate sacrifice. Chrysalis knelt down and sighed in regret at the sergeant's fate. Moments later, Celestia and the EUP with her stormed the cave, changelings following closely behind. Some of the EUP and changelings were worse for wear, but Celestia herself was as pristine as always. "Chrysalis!" Celestia called as she rushed to the changeling queen's side, spotting Longshot when she got there.
"Longshot?"
Celestia called, sorrow filling her heart on realizing the sergeant's final fate.
"What happened?"
"The fiend claimed his last victim."
"And where is Broadsword now?"
Chrysalis pointed towards the dead changeling.
"I don't think it was ever Broadsword."
Celestia's eyes were drawn to the deceased infiltrator.
"A changeling? Then where is the real commander?"
Vladimir had also spotted what had become of his friend, but there would be time for mourning later. For now, he had a job to do. As he and the EUP spread through the cave, he spotted an unremarkable area of particularly no importance. So unimportant, he wanted to look away. "Hold up!" Vladimir shouted. "There's a perception filter over here!" All the guards converged onto the spot Vladimir had pointed out. One of the unicorns in the group lit up her horn and dispelled the filter, revealing a passageway previously hidden from sight.
It would seem Luna's special training paid off,"
Celestia remarked.
"I don't see any other casualties among us,"
Chrysalis noted.
"That's because there weren't any, which I made certain of myself. though some of my ponies and your changelings did take some nasty injuries. Aside from a few scars, I'm confident every pony will make a full recovery. However, our adversaries foolishly fought to the last pony. They are gone.
Broadsword's head hung low as several sounds roused him from his sleep. After a little while, however, the sounds ceased, and sleep began to reclaim the exhausted Pegasus. Only for the sound of approaching hoofs to rouse him once again. "Sweet Celestia, is that who I think it is?" A familiar voice could be heard. "Captain Vespertilio," Broadsword weakly whispered, looking up at the approaching ponies. "Commander? Medic! Some pony get a medic!" Vladimir called back to the ponies following him, all of whom scrambled out to get Broadsword some help, leaving only the commander and Vladimir in the small cavern. Despite everything, Broadsword managed to chuckle. "You have no idea how good it is to see you." "I can imagine. Are you aware of what's transpired?" "Yes, I know everything. I may also have some information you don't know. The changeling was an arrogant bastard, but he tended to like gloating, and relate all of his glorious achievements to me." "Right, well, all the hostiles here are neutralized, so let's get you out of here." As Vladimir got to work on releasing Broadsword's restraints, he didn't notice an equine-shaped figure approaching from behind, blade raised. Broadsword did, however. The moment he was free, Broadsword darted forwards, grabbed Vladimir's blade, and sliced it straight through the golem's neck, its head slowly sliding off as a baffled Vladimir watched. "You missed one," Broadsword remarked before he collapsed, too weak to keep standing. As the 4 helicopters descended on Canterlot, they were met with a flurry of activity. Several ambulance chariots were ready to receive the wounded, and guards moved to keep back yet more pesky reporters. As the choppers landed and powered down, medics rushed forwards to see to the less seriously wounded, while stretchers were brought out to receive those with more serious injuries that needed immediate medical attention. Broadsword was loaded onto one such stretcher and rushed into an ambulance. Vladimir was tempted to go with him and make sure he was all right, but before anything else, there was a letter he had to write. Vladimir looked over to one stretcher being loaded into an ambulance, but unlike the others, the pony on that stretcher wasn't going to any operating theater. Longshot was wearing a black bag. He was going to the morgue. Vladimir sighed as Longshot was taken away and looked down at the crossbow he carried in his hoofs. He would make sure the weapon was laid to rest with its rightful owner when the time came. For now, though, he had a letter to write to an unsuspecting family in Manhattan.